On today's episode of You Asked, how to clean a QD-OLED screen, because it's way trickier than you think. Blu-ray got a stay of execution, so should you go get a new 4K Blu-ray player? And how to make sure your AV receiver isn't messing with your picture quality. Again. Welcome back, everyone. I'm Caleb Dennison, and this is You Asked, the show in which I answer questions you asked in hopes that I can help you and others with similar tech questions. If you've got a question you need answered, please email it to youasked@digitaltrends.com, and then tune in Sundays at 7:45 a.m. Pacific time to see if your question gets picked to be answered on the show. We start out with an email from Jack, who writes, "With your encouragement about how good modern sets are, I recently upgraded from a Panasonic Plasma to an LG G4, and it is spectacular. However, I'm wondering if I'm getting the best source signal into it. I have a Denon AVR X6300H. I run my cable box, Amazon Cube, and an Oppo 203 through it, and I wonder if the receiver is passing along the highest signal generated by those sources. When I use the TV's UI for sources like YouTube, Netflix, etc., they seem to look better." Thanks for your email, Jack, and congrats on the TV upgrade. I'm always happy to hear from folks who are thrilled with the upgrade from plasma TVs, which were awesome in their day. I still love them, and they're still lovely to watch, but as I've said before, many of today's TVs are objectively superior by many meaningful metrics. Perhaps not all metrics. I know plasma TV motion is still very enjoyable, but for contrast and color, we have leapt well ahead of plasma, and I'm super happy that you are excited about your new TV. Anyway, I covered this in a recent episode, but I think it bears repeating because I keep hearing about it. Folks, if you are passing your video signal through an AV receiver and then off to your TV, then I highly recommend you turn off the receiver's video processing. This is far from the first time I've heard someone complain that their in-TV apps look better than their other sources when running through an AV receiver. But that's not the only reason the signals coming through the receiver may not look as good, and I'll get into that too. But first, Jack, if you go into your Denon's video section in the user menu, and I think you want video mode, you should be able to make a selection for pass-through or off. And this will send an unaltered signal to your TV. If I got the terms wrong for your particular receiver, I apologize. I didn't go look at the manual, but that's what you're looking for. You want to make sure you're getting pass through or you turn off video processing. That doesn't mean it's not going to pass through the signal. It just means it's not altering the signal in any way. Now, if you've taken care of that, let's check on some other things, and everybody could stand to do this if they're connecting devices to their TV to make sure you're getting the best possible picture quality. Some TVs do require you to enable enhanced color for HDR for specific HDMI ports. So on an LG G4, for example, you go to Settings and then General, then HDMI Deep Color, and make sure the HDMI port that you're using for your receiver, likely the eARC port, has HDMI Deep Color turned on. This will enable HDR so that any HDR signal sent through the receiver will be displayed in HDR, which can make a huge difference on your picture quality. Mostly HDR content is going to come from your Fire TV Cube, I think, Jack. Then make sure your picture settings are similar for that HDMI port as they are for streaming. Remember, on LG OLEDs, you have to adjust the settings for each HDMI port, and HDMI picture settings are separate from streaming apps and home screen picture settings. One of my few lingering complaints about LG TVs, actually, because otherwise I love them. Anyway, I hope that helps, and let us know either way. Next, Dhruva writes, "I wanted to ask how much backlight bleed is acceptable in an LCD panel. I just got a Bravia 3 75-incher as I wanted to prioritize size over picture quality, and I'm letting go of OLED. When I received it, I noticed major backlight bleeding from the top right corner. I'm disappointed and just wanted to know how much of this issue is acceptable. And I'm attaching a photo for your reference, and please give me your advice." Hey, Dhruva. So first off, sorry you're having trouble. Nobody wants to be disappointed with a new TV purchase. I get it. Second, I have to admit something. When I read that you had moved to a Bravia 3 from an OLED, my first thought was, That's a mighty big move, and of course you're going to have a backlight complaint. To go from 0 backlight issues in OLED to what are going to be somewhat more significant backlight issues in an LCD TV with no zones, that's a big swing. But I am so glad that you sent that picture, because that picture tells me the whole story. Which reminds me, folks, if you think a picture might help me understand your situation, then by all means, send it. A picture is almost always going to help me out. Plus, I never mind getting pics of your AV gear. It's a lot of fun to check them out. With all of that said, y'all see this upper right-hand corner here? Notice how it is way different than any of the other corners on the TV? That is not right. Now, it could be a quality control issue, but more likely that corner took some kind of smack or hit in shipping or during the unboxing process or even setup. Now, Dhruva, I'm not blaming you. I don't know when that actually happened, but I'm telling you that is not how the TV should perform. So if you can get that set replaced, then I advise you do so, because that corner should look like the other corners. There's something going on there in that upper right corner that should not be going on. And if somebody tells you, oh, well, that's kind of normal with these TVs, no, that is not. That is outside the realm of normality, and it should be replaced. RB writes, hi Caleb, I recently purchased a Hisense 75 U8N from 2024 and I'm loving it. Dumb question, when switching from cable to streaming to Blu-ray, do I have to manually switch back and forth from SDR to HDR? Is there any bad effect on my TV if I left the setting on HDR? First of all, there are no dumb questions. That's a great question, actually. So when you enable deep color or HDR for an HDMI input, as I mentioned earlier, you aren't at risk for messing up SDR content going to that HDR port or HDR enabled port. Generally, seeing SDR in an HDR container, or another way of putting that is Rec 709 color in a DCI-P3 container or a BT2020 container, generally that's no problem for TVs to handle. The whole getting HDR thing is meant to be pretty automated once you tell the TV, yes, I'm good with HDR, or I'll be getting HDR signals. It's actually when you somehow force an HDR signal onto a TV that is fixed at SDR that you get a washed out hypercolor mess. So in short, no, I think you're gonna be fine. Now, I'm a little concerned because you said something about the HDR setting, and I don't know if we're talking about the same settings here. So if you've turned on some sort of like dynamic pretend HDR for your SDR content, I'm not sure if you're gonna like that look or not. That's entirely up to you. I just wanted to distinguish that we're talking about two very different things. That in mind, let's move on to an email from Norm from Canada, who writes, last fall, I upgraded from a 55-inch TCL 6 series to a 65-inch LG C3. I absolutely love the OLED, it's my first, and I was wanting to add a Blu-ray player, and I was wondering, should I spend the extra money for the 4K player, or would a regular player, along with the TV's upscaling, suffice? Note that I do have a PS5 that can play my 4K discs, but when I do, the TV defaults to game mode instead of movie or filmmaker modes. Hey Norm, so I'm gonna answer your question in a moment, but first I'm gonna be a little bit opportunistic here and just call attention to the fact that Sony just released a new 4K Blu-ray player. Isn't that exciting? All of this talk of Blu-ray going away, what with Best Buy pulling the discs from store shelves and such, but discs are still being made. High-end brands like Magnetar are making new players, and now Sony comes out with a refreshed model of its UBP X700 called the UBP X700K. Very similar to the version that was released in 2018, but no internet connectivity, no streaming apps, just a solid, I presume, player. I gotta say, the day that the disc dies, I will be very, very sad. I might have to take some time to myself. I know that high quality streaming could deliver quality just as excellent as disc one day, bandwidth permitting, but I still like having the physical copy because, can anyone guess why? Leave a comment if you think you know. I'll let you know at the end of this episode and we'll see if you were right. Anyway, Norm, upscaled 1080p Blu-ray, as good as it can look, is no substitute whatsoever for a true 4K Blu-ray. If you're gonna buy a new player, buy a 4K Blu-ray player and buy 4K discs to put in it. The reason it's so much better isn't the resolution, it's the higher bit rate and higher bit depth. It's so much cleaner looking, the HDR is excellent, and there's little to no color banding. Also, I understand if you want to have a separate player, a standalone player will have better overall picture quality than the PS5, though let's be honest, it's not going to be a night and day difference, and some folks couldn't tell the difference even if they cared. However, you don't have to put up with the PS5 forcing game mode on you if you don't want it to. First off, it shouldn't do that if you're not playing a game, but if you want to have control over your picture mode, you can turn off ALLM, which stands for Auto Low Latency Mode. You can turn that off in the PS5's menu. Go to Settings, navigate to Screen and Video, select Video Output, and turn ALLM off. Just a tip. Pause. Malik or Malik, not sure which, sorry if I mispronounced your name, that person writes, my LG G2 OLED TV suddenly can't detect any video files from any of my hard disks or thumb drives going into the USB port. It could before, and even my old TV can still access and play the video files. How could I fix this problem? Basically, all the folders and pics show up, but the video files are non-existent when I try to browse them on the TV. When I plug the hard drive into a laptop or old TV, I can see and play the videos just fine. Malik, I'm afraid that I have no idea what's going on for you there. I'm reading your question here in hopes that someone else watching this show has experienced the same thing and knows more than I do. If I had to guess, I'd say a firmware or software update may have borked the onboard player. Clearly, the USB interface is still working, but the fact that the TV doesn't recognize the video files tells me it doesn't like the file type suddenly, and that points to an unintended consequence of an update. Now, it's possible the next over-the-air update will fix it, but if anyone out there knows better, please weigh in the comments. Gabriel writes, I'm reaching out because I'm experiencing an issue with controlling my home entertainment setup using a single remote. Haven't we all had that problem? Gabriel has a 65-inch 2022 Samsung The Frame paired with an Apple TV 4K. Goes on to say, the only connection to the TV is the Apple TV apart from my soundbar in the eARC input. While the Apple TV remote successfully turns both devices off, it's problematic when powering them on. The Apple TV always turns on, but the TV sometimes switches to the Apple TV input as intended, and other times it switches to the TV source as if there's an antenna or cable connected, even though there isn't. This forces me to use the Samsung remote to manually change the source, which defeats the purpose of a single remote control setup. I've tried adjusting settings on both the Apple TV and the TV itself without success. Is there any configuration or workaround that could resolve this issue, or is it simply inherent to the pairing of the Samsung, the Frame, and the Apple TV? By the way, Gabriel said the wall. I don't know that there's a 65-inch the wall, so I said the Frame. If I'm wrong about that, Gabriel, my apologies. Anyway, moving on from there, that is indeed frustrating, and while I can't say with certainty what may be causing it, I have also experienced it myself. I was testing a 2024 Samsung TV recently and noticed that it kept returning to Samsung TV Plus and auto-playing content when I didn't want it to. Didn't do this all the time, it just seemed to happen like every fourth or fifth time I turned on the TV. I don't know, might be baked into the TV to do that, I'm just not sure. I will say when it comes to anything that involves HDMI CEC or consumer electronics control, anything can happen. But I'm not entirely sure that's what's going on for you. I do think I have some good news. Yeah. I noticed while testing out some 2025 Samsung TV models recently that there is a new, very obvious setting that lets you tell the TV exactly what to do when you turn it on. Now, I don't know if that has rolled out to your TV via update or if it ever will. For now, try this out if you haven't already. Go into Settings, then General, then Smart Features, and turn off Auto Run Last App. Make sure Auto Run Last App is turned off. Then go back to the main settings menu, and I think it's under, well, it's either under General or Privacy, but find Start Screen options, and then turn off Start with Smart Hub Home, and see if the TV doesn't always just turn on to your last used input, which should be the Apple TV once you've selected it. Anyway, would you let us know if that worked? Christian writes, hi Caleb, not so long ago I bought a 55-inch Samsung S90D OLED TV, all thanks to you, and I've been loving it. Thing is, this is my first time owning an OLED TV, and in this case, one with an anti-glare coating. Fast forward sometime later, I noticed there was a fingerprint on my screen. I tried cleaning it using a microfiber towel gently on the screen, and at first glance, I thought I'd cleaned it. But on closer inspection, I saw that it left a blue smudge and couldn't seem to get rid of it. Is there any way, a safe way, of cleaning that screen, or should I just ignore it since I don't want to cause some scratches? Any help is appreciated. And then, along the same lines, Monir writes, I recently purchased an S90C 65-inch, and I have a lot of cats, which always like to sneeze in front of the screen. That is unfortunate. Monir continues to say he then went to clean a spot with alcohol, which he now understands was a bad idea, and that made the anti-reflective coating seem to disappear from the cleaned area. Monir wonders if there's any chance to fix what they messed up, perhaps reapplying the affected area with anti-reflective coating by spraying it or something. Okay, so we're gonna work backward here. Monir, I am so sorry, but I don't know of any way to restore removed anti-reflective coating. But maybe, just maybe, it isn't actually removed, and what you're noticing is something similar to what Christian noticed. I'll offer my suggestion in a moment, but for now, a PSA. Folks, if you have a QD-OLED TV, and really this goes for any TV, but especially QD-OLEDs, never, ever use alcohol or a glass cleaner with alcohol or ammonia when cleaning your TV screen. Different TV makers use different kinds of anti-glare and anti-reflection coatings, and there's just too much risk of you damaging the screen. As I explained in this video about how to clean a TV screen, in which I look like I'm gonna keel over and die, all you need is distilled water. You can use regular water, but I don't like anything with minerals in it. And then you need a microfiber cloth, preferably a low lint microfiber cloth. Like, look, see this cloth with all these loops? It's almost like terry cloth. That's great for catching dust, but I don't like to use these when I'm using a little water to clean a screen. Now, if you have a heavily soiled screen, and I mean there are gloops of matter on the TV, the best way I've found to get that off is to spray it with warm water, let it sit to loosen up, then wipe it away. Then let that dry. Your screen will not be clean yet, it'll just be free of debris. Then you use like a micro mist of water, you wipe gently, and then allow that to dry. Then grab a dry microfiber cloth and kind of buff it out. See if that helps. I really hope that it does. Thanks so much for watching, everyone. Please consider liking, commenting, subscribing. It's free to do. It's a huge help to the channel and helps keep this content free as well. I'll see you on the next one. And until then, here's 2 other videos I think you might like. Yeah, we're rocking now.